Hello, everyone. Welcome to Seasons of Agent, a virtual event dedicated to exploring the dynamic world of intelligent agents, automation, and the future of AI-powered productivity. Today, I have with me is Mr. Kannan K. Sir. He is Chief Technology Officer at Concert IDC. Handing over the session to you, sir.
Thanks, Sudhanshu. Thank you. Hello, everyone. So, as Sudhanshu was saying, this is a Microsoft Skills Fest event that we have right now. And I'm just going to share my screen. I hope you guys can see it. Perfect. All right. So, the main topic that we're going to talk about today is build and extending agent experience with Copilot Studio. A little bit about me before we get into the specifics. So, as Sudhanshu mentioned, I work as a CTO for a company called Concert IDC, and I hold few Microsoft certifications, few Azure certifications, and I've been in the industry for more than 21 years now. I've been a lover of Microsoft technologies from the beginning of my career, and that's something very close to me. And I've been working on various solutions and technologies related to Microsoft for the past 20 years or so. So this entire topic that we're going to talk about is part of an initiative that Microsoft has taken. It's the Microsoft AI Skill Fest event, which kicked off on April 8th, and it runs through May 28th. And for people who have not registered for this event, just take a moment to scan the QR code and just make sure that you participate in the event. There's a lot of exciting events that are happening, a lot of hackathon events and training sessions that are happening that will help you upskill yourself. And you'll also earn a badge as part of this, which you can just post it in your social media to create awareness among your peers and help them out. So let's dive into the topic for today. The primary agenda that we will see today is the Microsoft Copilot Studio and how we're going to build agents using it. A little bit about autonomous agent, which has been very popular in the last few weeks, and we'll talk about what are the capabilities that we have in terms of extending it. So, Microsoft Copilot Studio. You would have heard about the term Copilot for the last 2 years. But just to give you a overview, Microsoft Copilot Studio is an integral part of the Microsoft Copilot stack. It gives you a low-code way of creating intelligent agents. It's part of the Power Platform suite of applications that we have. It's a low-code spinning across various levels of tools that are available and offerings that are available at Microsoft. So when we talk about Power Platform, there are Power Apps, which are for mobile apps and desktop applications. There are Power Automate tools, which are for cloud and desktop process automations. People who are familiar with RPA process will be very familiar with Power Automate and Power Apps. And Power BI is, as most of you know, it is basically a business analytics tool and a reporting tool. They also have Power Pages, which is a form of enterprise website creation app through which you can create pages and share it among the enterprise systems that you have and do a lot of features around them. So Copilot is part of that suite of tools that we have. And behind the scenes, it is supported by a lot of frameworks and a lot of managed environments that's going to enable a lot of capabilities for you in terms of performing your day-to-day operations. So there can be a question that might arise, right? So people would say, okay, I've heard about the term Copilot. What's really going on, right? So Copilot is really, I would say, a game changer, uh, given that the amount of ROI it gives for the AI investments certain organizations are doing. It's giving you a lot of return on investment for the efforts that you're putting in. So we'll see some of the capabilities in today's session. When we say Copilot, it is basically a productivity enhancement tool, and hence the term Copilot, right? It is basically your Copilot to achieve your personal goals, or be it your career goals, or whatever you do in your day-to-day work. It can be your personal assistant there. So, it has a lot of solutions that are magical in nature, And that magic comes from the agents that are attached to the Copilot, or the agentic capability of Copilot is what is going to give you that productivity lift in terms of day-to-day process and things around that. So every organization has a business process. It can be a simple process to a most advanced and complex process that they might have. It might be as simple as helping someone onboard into an organization, some sort of a paperwork that is there which you want to automate it, you can do that. Or it can be a complex process like a supply chain process that you have, which involves too many parties and there's a lot of data that's moving around the flow and you want to automate it. So Copilot can cater to all such needs as well. So when we talk about this agentic capability of Copilot, which does the magic of what Copilot is doing, last November, during the Microsoft Ignite event that we had, there were a lot of pre-built agents that were released by Microsoft. This is just to show the capability of what agents can do and what are the capabilities that it can offer. And there are some agents that you might have been familiar with, like an employee self-service agent that we have. There was a SharePoint agent and things around it. There were also partner-based events that came from third-party tools like third-party providers like ServiceNow, SAP, and Adobe, and they created agents which can help them integrate with their products. Let's say you have a ServiceNow agent which can integrate with ServiceNow capabilities and offer that offer of a productivity lift to the end user when they want to use that. So, what we will see in the next few minutes is talk about how you can create your own agent and how Copilot is going to be your agent way of doing work. So, we'll start with a new topic here about building an agent. So when we talk about Copilot Studio, so there are a lot of capabilities that it offers. It gives you a capability to create an agent, share knowledge that the agent can use. It can give you the logic that you can define on certain topics that your agent is capable of addressing. It can take actions, it can integrate with plugins. And once your agent is ready, you can publish it to multiple channels. It can be through your Microsoft Teams, it can be through external systems. Let's say you want to publish it on Slack, you want to publish it on Telegram, Facebook for marketing, or Instagram. Wherever you want to do it, you can do that. And then you are, since building does not end about just creating a product, right? You need a capability to monitor and improve to see if it's really adding value, where you can assess your ROI and see what changes you can make in order to make your agent perform better. So that's where the monitor and improve section comes in. You can also extend it with the Azure platform. We'll talk more about it in the next few minutes. But this is what the Copilot Studio offers. It's the way of how you can create an agent, publish it, monitor it, and then how you can improve on it. So we will when we spoke about the pre-built agents, right? So these are out-of-the-box agents that are given to you when you go to the Copilot Studio, and there are different ways by which you can create these agents. So you can build it as a conversational agent, wherein you just have a conversation with a chat through a chat medium. You just say what you want, and then behind the scenes, Copilot Studio does the magic for you and creates an agent for you. If you are a person who is little tech savvy, where you're not too technical but you know the logic of how things are supposed to work, and you have a canvas that is given to you where you can use low code based graphical interface and define what you want to do. If you're a very tech savvy guy and if you like coding very much and if you want to get into the aspects of writing code, you can switch to a code view, which is a YAML based programming that we use for Copilot Studio. And even you can create these codes and publish it or share it with other people if they want to reuse that. So there's a lot of offerings in terms of how you use the Copilot Studio, and this is what it's going to be. So let's start this with a small demo. Let me go back to the browser. I'm just going to go to copilotstudio.microsoft.com. So this will be your landing site for creating any of your copilots. So once you launch here, you don't have to be an enterprise subscriber. You can also have create one with your personal account and subscribe. There's a free tier that it offers to begin with. But if you want to really work on an enterprise solution in your workplace and you want to make use of this, I would strongly recommend go with an enterprise subscription that you have, which gives you a lot of offerings in terms of connectivities and connectors that come along with that. So what we're going to do is we will, when we spoke about three modes by which you can create your agents, it can be through a conversation, it can be how you interact with it. So I'll start about the default offerings that are given within the platform, right? So if you go to explore agent section, so these are the agents that are created by Microsoft or its partners, and you can just take a look at some of the agents and see how things are. For example, let's say I'm a person who likes to travel a lot and I want to create a safe travels agent. I would just click on this. So this is a predefined template that can give you a lot of information. So let's say that you want to give it a name. I'm just going to say safe travels. Let's say I'm going to call it safe travels buddy. If I want to change the icon, I would. If you want to give a short description about what this agent is going to do or what this agent is going to help me with, I given all the information related to that. And you have an option here uh, where you would basically give the instructions to that particular agent. You just say what it is supposed to do. Here it just comes up with the default prompt. It says you're an assistant that helps answer questions about traveling safely, both domestically and internationally. Please respond in a polite manner. So this is where you set the tone of the conversation. If you want it to be with humor sense, if you want it to be use emojis and things like that, you would give your prompts here and you would customize it. And once you have this, you have an option here called adding knowledge sources. So by default, this predefined template comes with a US travel website. But let's say that I wanted to add more countries to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up a few websites that I've taken. So this is a Singapore website, Singapore government website, which talks about how do you apply for a visa, what do you do for it. So I'm just going to add this link as another knowledge source. It can be any publicly hosted source. You can pull it up. I'm just going to say this is for Singapore, just an identifier for me so that I don't have to look at the link and understand it. This is more about for me to look at it later and make sure that I added the right knowledge sources. And let's say this is related to Dubai, and I'm going to add this here as another knowledge source. And let's say this is something that I'm going to do for all European countries. It talks about Schengen visa and other things. I'm just going to say Europe. So these are just government websites that we have, which you can reuse it as part of your knowledge source. And once you give all these knowledge source and you click on add, these are public websites that you're given as a knowledge source for now. You have an option here to give you startup prompts. So what we mean by startup prompts is that to begin the conversation with the end user, if you want to give him some sort of a startup prompt, let's say as soon as the agent greets the person, you wanted to say, are you looking for a visa related to Dubai? So I'm just going to give it a title. Let's say, looking for visa details to travel. So these startup prompts can actually help begin the conversation with the person that's going to interact with your agent. So this is a simple interface. I've not written any piece of code. All it's doing is just defining certain things with configurations. I'm just going to save this and let's go with the create option. So once I create this agent, it will take a few seconds. But once this agent is created, it's going to be available for you in the dashboard here, in the home page here, and that gives you capability to publish them. So if you go to the channels tab at the end, This is where you see a list of places where you can publish this out of the box. If you want to publish this to Telegram, Slack, Microsoft Teams, certain things that where you want to publish it, you can just click on it and publish it. But for now, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to test my agent that I've created. So let's say we know that the default starter came with just the US based knowledge base. So I'm going to ask what are the travel requirements go to, or I'm just going to go for Singapore. So now that I've asked a question, I've given a knowledge source. It's going to go look at all the knowledge sources, look for relevant information, bring in the details with the citation. So it's giving me a prompt saying, when traveling to Singapore, this is what you should do. And it's giving me a few citations which I can use to verify the source, right? So if I want to get more details about the options that it gave me, I can click on these references or citations. I can go back, read more about it, but the tool as such has given you a summary of what you were looking for. That's what it has done for you. And the cool thing about this is that you see a workflow here under the topic section, the entire conversation, how it happened. Even though if you're not a technology driven person, if you want to understand the flow and if you understand flow charts better, so this is what's happening behind the scenes, right? So it triggered when a user was giving an input. It's a chat-based input, and then this is the workflow that was executed behind it. Don't get confused with this. We'll have one of the demos that talks about how do we work on topics. So if you don't get what I'm saying from a workflow perspective, don't get worked up about it. We just understand that behind the scenes there is a workflow that's being executed, which you can visualize to see what's happening. But now you get the idea of how easy it is to create an agent with publicly available data sources, and you have an easy means to publish it. You just pick a channel, you publish it, and then you're done. People can start using it. You also have good capabilities in terms of analytics. So once you publish this event, let me publish it. Right now, I've not selected a channel, so it's not going to be published anywhere. But if I select a channel and then publish it, it'll go to the respective channels automatically. And that's why it was saying it'll be automatically published. So once I publish it, it'll take a few seconds to publish it, make sure it gets everything ready. Once it is done, you can go to this analytics section where you can look at some of the metrics about how many times this particular agent was accessed, what was the response like. So this is what I was talking about from a monitoring perspective. So it tells you about the effectiveness of your agent, what were the outcomes, what kind of engagement the user had, what were the knowledge sources, which was used most, what's happening behind the scenes, what was the user satisfaction, and so on. So all we did in the last few minutes is that we created an agent, we configured with public sources that is available, and this knowledge sources does not have to be public also. So when you click on this link, you also, if you are working on an enterprise, let's say that this is an app that you're building for your company, and your company has few travel policies. And if those travel policies have to be attached as part of your knowledge source, let's say your company does not allow you to travel to Europe because of whatever restrictions that they have, you click on this. And if you go to advanced, there's enterprise level connectivity that you get. Let's say you want to connect to Salesforce, you want to connect to an Azure SQL database, which has other capabilities of pulling data based on the questions that are asked. If you want to connect to ServiceNow, there's a ton of possibilities that are available on how you can extend. Even if you have Azure OpenAI search capabilities, like if you want to connect to an OpenAI search, you can do that. I'm not going to enable it right now, but you get the idea, right? So you have different means by which you can connect to different knowledge sources and allow the user to interact with those knowledge sources. So we'll go back to the slide and we'll talk a little bit about the knowledge sources. So as I was saying, these are the different knowledge sources that we have and how the interaction happens. So this can also be PDF documents. You can manually upload files as well. Let's say you have a PDF document or a JSON file or PowerPoint slides that your organization uses. And if you want to use them, you have all that capability to enable your agent access any kind of information that you have. We'll talk about creating an agent through a chat-based medium. So what I mean by that is, let me go back to the Copilot Studio. So on the top, you see a section here where you can have an interaction with the Copilot Studio engine that's powering this entire thing. And you can just give it a prompt and ask what you want to do, right? So let's say I wanted to give it information about, I want to create an agent. Okay, let me come up with a use case, right? So let's say that I have a lot of .NET developers in my company, being an IT services company. We have a lot of technologies that we serve, and let's say that I have a .NET developer, and every time there's a question that comes up about .NET, people have to go through Microsoft documentation, look at all the details that are there. So usually, what we do is we just go to Microsoft Learn and ask questions or go through the learn site about different topics that we have and try to understand what C#.NET is, what are the different frameworks that are available, what are the different integration patterns that are available, and so on. So rather than going through textual context content and trying to understand how things are, let's say we're going to build an agent to assist .NET developers and answer any questions they ask related to .NET. So I'll start with just this simple prompt, just a chat text. And when I start this conversation, it opens up the agent builder that's powering it. And again, this is a conversational agent builder, right? So it is running an agent behind the scenes, or it is running a chat based interface. The Copilot Studio is doing that. And it is asking me what I want to do. So it is saying that, okay, I'm here. These are the things that I'm going to do. And it says, great. Now let's determine the name for the agent. It is asking me, should I call it .NET Developer Assistant? I'm just going to say, sure, do that. And then it is going to ask me a few questions like what kind of knowledge source should I use, right? So it is saying, first, what specific tasks and goals should the agent be focused on? For example, should we provide code samples, troubleshoot error, explain concepts? I'm going to say all three. Being lazy, I'm just going to copy paste this. And once I give this as an option, it is going to think further and ask certain things, right? So what should be the agent, what should the agent avoid discussing? So if they have any questions on Java, Node.js, politely respond saying, sorry, I will not be able to help with this. So what I'm doing is, rather than clicking buttons and doing the configuration of building an agent, I'm having a conversation through a chat screen and saying what I want to build. Right? And it is asking me, the .NET agent or the .NET developer assistant is now set up, and it is saying that it can politely decline. If you have any further refinements or add, it is asking me to do what you want to do in the Copilot Studio. So before we create this, I'm just going to show a few options here. If you're working in an organization where you have to support more than one language, you have an option here. Click on Edit Language, and the drop-down gives you the list of languages that it supports by default. Let's stick with English for now. I'm just going to save that, and you click on advanced settings here. So there are different options that runs behind the scenes for people who are familiar with Power Platforms. So this tells you where you want the solution to be saved, like what kind of template it is supposed to be. We'll leave that as a default option for now, and I'll just say create. So once I do that, so what Copilot Studio did for me now is it understood the context of what I was trying to do. It had a conversation with me, and it created an agent for me, right? So it automatically pulled up the agent with all the details. So it tells me this is the name of my agent, this is the agent's purpose, and what's the set of instructions it's going to do, and all that it did. And here is my agent tester where I can just go here and ask for questions. I'm going to start with basic questions here. Okay, how can I, what are the loops, shapes? So now it's looking for .NET based data sources that it has. And if you look at it, we have not attached any specific source. So it's basically going to the open source that we have and trying to pull out, I mean, Microsoft open source links that we have from the learn, and it's going to pull up all the details and share all the details related to it. Right? If you want to augment your agent that you created with more information, let's say that in your organization you have coding standards document, a guideline document that you have, which is very specific to your organization. Then you can add these as knowledge sources. Click on add, go to the SharePoint site, which has the link of all the knowledge bases that you have related to coding standards and things like that, and you can add it. Or if you want to attach it as a file, you can do that as well. Need to go back, and if you want to upload it as a file here, you can do that as well. The same knowledge options that we saw before is what you would see here. So this is quite interesting, right? So now we will talk a little bit about the logic that is involved, right? So what it happens is anytime a question is being posted to this particular user, uh, there is different topics that are under discussion, right? So there's a common theme that's discussed based on the bot description that you had given or the agent description that you had given. But if you want to customize it and work on different topics, you have an option here called add topic. So let's say I'm going to have a workflow here where if any integration related questions are posted, I don't want the agent to give some answers which might confuse the team. I want this to be routed to a technical architect who's working within the organization. So what I'm going to do is within the phrase here, I'm going to add few phrases. It's any time there's a phrase in the question of natural language that is being asked to the bot, if there's a question about integration or system integration, let's say distributed systems, REST API, whatever, any phrases that you can think of, which you think that instead of people learning from the public sources, you want them to be routed to a technical lead or an architect who is supposed to answer these questions. You give those phrases. Now you have an option to create a workflow around it. So when we say a workflow around it, there's a ton of options here. So there are close to 1400 connectors that out of the box Copilot Studio supports from both internal for the standard tools and partner tools that we have. So there are different options that you have within the workflow here. So now when this trigger happens, when something on the topic is discussed about integrations and things like that, you can take an action here. You can just say add an action, and so these were the connectors that I was talking about. And there's a lot of connectors that are available. I'm going to say send email for now. And I'm going to choose send email option. And I'm going to choose this Office 365 Outlook option. If you have different providers for emails, let's say you have a Gmail account or a different provider, you can choose that. It is going to ask you for permissions. I'm just going to say choose my permission for now. Right, I have to just accept that. I've done that. So it takes a minute. Once the permission is set up, you see that it is all set up here. And we have two accounts there. I'm just going to enable both in case it picks the wrong one. All right. So once the permissions are enabled, when I click on submit, now my Outlook account is connected to this workflow. So when we say an Outlook account is connected, there are options that are related to email that is exposed as part of the connector. So if I have an input, so it is going to ask me what should I do. It should send an email. I'm going to say send an email to my email ID. There are advanced input options here if you want to have a subject. So query from question from the .NET Developer Assistant user. There are other options also, which are, I'm going to skip it for now. Like you can set your header text and other things. Within the body, what I'm going to do is I need the user input. So whatever input that the user entered is what I need. So I'm just going to add another question about this, saying, so when this type of questions was asked within the chat, I'm going to say, tell me more about the integrations that we are trying to build. So I'm going to ask the question. This question choice can be a multi-choice, can be different options, like a typical form where you ask questions. You can define certain things here, but I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to get the user input directly. But let's say if you're building an integration where you want to get more options about, let's give it that you will have a multiple choice about the type of integration. Let's say if it's a payment gateway integration, or if it's related to B2B integration or a B2C integration, whatever options that you want to show them, you can define it here. But for now, I'm just going to collect whatever response that the user enters, and that response is going to be stored in this variable. You have an option to change that variable. If you click on this variable, you can change the variable. But since this is just a demo, I'm just going to ignore it and reuse it. But if you're defining something, make sure you follow proper patterns. Just make sure your variable names are meaningful. If you want to call it user response, just rename it as it is. And this response that we received is what I'm going to send it in the body, in the message email body that if there are files that the user has uploaded, you can use the attachment options if you want it, but I'm just going to ignore all those things for now. And once the email is sent, I'm going to send a message to the user back saying, your question has been routed to an tech lead. Please check your email for a response and the tech lead to proceed further. I'm giving some response to the user to say that acknowledging that this is a request that I received, I routed it to your tech lead, and they would respond back. So once I create the workflow, this is a simple workflow that I've created, but you can, the power is unlimited, right? Because you have all the connectors, you can define the workflows, and this is basically a workflow builder. You can add as many tasks as you want, and it's a low code way of doing it, right? We have not written any code. All we have done is just created the connectors and added things. If you're a fan of adaptive cards, where you want to choose an adaptive card, there's an adaptive card builder that's given. If you want to say, go to adaptive card designer, this will take you to the adaptivecarddesigner.io. And this is one of the sites, it's hosted by Microsoft, where you have a designer tool. Let's say you want to give them a very good looking option and give them certain form fields to fill. This gives you an option. There's a sample that you have. If you go to samples, there's several. Let's say if it's a food order, this is what you would see. So this entire content that you get is converted into an adaptive card, which is a JSON structure that you have, which you can post it within that workflow and collect it. Or if it's a flight itinerary, and if you want to give them options, if it's details that you want to publish, if it's related to, let's say, an order delivery information or input that you want to collect, or a form, a normal input form, something like this. All this is available as a JSON response to the adaptive card. You can pick it up, configure it here, but just paste it here. The entire JSON that you get from there, you can paste it here. And this gives you a better way of interacting with the user and collecting the details rather than just keeping it very plain text like conversation that you see here now. So with all these settings, I'm just going to save this now, whatever we did now, and let's test this. So I'm going to say I want to build an integration. Since we have used the phrase integration, you can see that this entire tool is highlighting where the workflow is. So this topic related integration was triggered, this trigger came in, this was executed, now it's at the question phase. It's going to ask the user a question. It's saying, can you tell me more about the integration? I'm just going to say, I want to build a Stripe-based integration, gateway integration. We need more support around this. So once I do this and click on the send option, so this entire information is going to be captured and this is going to be sent as an email. And you can see that this is green mark because it has triggered an email. Let me check if I've received that email. Real quick. So once this entire integration workflow triggers, automatically an email would be sent. It says there's a connection parameter, I'll have to do it. Okay. So now I'll have to establish the permission here. So if I go to manage connections, since I'm doing it for the first time, it is asking me to establish the connection between my Outlook account that is sending the email to make sure that it has the required permissions to work out. So once I choose this option, my connection would be successful. I can go back here, do a retry. You'll have to do this for the first time just to make sure that it works. So I'm going to ask the question again. I need some help with integrations. I'm going to copy paste this again. So you can visually see that the integration has triggered, it has gone to this point, and the execution is completed here. And to check my mailbox on the other window. Oops, I think I have an error here. It says 400 error. Let me do this. So let me change my connector here. I'm just going to use my personal ID instead of my office ID. So usually the account that you use for sending this email needs to have the right permissions here. I think that's what is triggering this problem right now. Let me set up another action quickly and then delete this one. So these are the options that I was talking about earlier. I'm going to choose a different account just to make sure it works. Yeah. So once I enable this action, it will ask me for authorization. I'll have to do the authorization again. Once the authorization is set, you should see a green check mark here. And I'm going to choose the same set of options too. Once I enable this, I'm going to send it to my office ID again. And in the subject, I'm going to say question from this assistant. And in the body, I'm going to choose the same value. I'm going to delete the previous one that we had. And Hopefully this should work. Let's test it out. I've saved it. Now I'm going to try, need some help with integrations again. Okay, it's prompting the question. I'll have to establish the connection for the first time. Right. Picked up the connection again. Something is not right at endpoint. So sorry about this. So let me show the agent that I created today morning again, just to compare what's going on. Usually this is not supposed to happen. All right. So this was the agent that I had. I'm going to the topic, and here is the connection string that I've set up, and all this. I'm going to say so. This entire workflow is starting now, and you can see the activity map related to that. And once it does this question, it will process the request that we had. And I'm just going to go back to the previous one to show you the same workflow. All right. But what was supposed to happen is it was supposed to send an email similar to what you're seeing here. Let's type to whatever question that you ask, it will trigger an email and you're supposed to get that. I think I have the office endpoint is returning a bad request here or here. I just need to figure out where the problem is. Go back to the topic again. Let me see if it's the parameters that I had used. So here is this. Here is the request. There's no attachment. All this looks good. All right, but the idea is that when you configure this properly and when you trigger it, this is supposed to show you a message similar to that. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to go over the next agenda in the topic. So we saw how you can logically define the flow and how you can run it. You can set the connectors, you can set the different actions and triggers that you can ask. And this can be a simple workflow like what we were trying to build, or it can be a complex workflow of asking questions and asking the forms, collecting details from the user. Imagine you're working at a contact center or a support team that has to route requests to different teams. So the entire workflow can be done through this triggers that we saw there. This entire option of canvas, the entire option of the triggers and the UI that you get, we saw about how we can use adaptive cards, which gives you the framework to collect additional details and standardize these different options. And we also spoke about channels where you can take the agent that you created and publish it in different channels that you have. We will talk a little bit about actions as well. So this is where the actions option will help you in terms of customizing your agent. So if you go back to your assistant that you have here, you have an option here called actions, and these actions will tell you what you can do. So if you want to pull data from an external source, So this is one of the options where if you want your agent to connect to a custom location or custom provider and pull details, this is where that operation happens for you. These are the different options that are there. And if you go to this, if you have a predefined library from where you want to pull it, you could do that. Or you have an option where you can go to a connector, uh, define a new action. If you want to make an API call, let's say if you want to do a REST API call when a particular question is being asked, if you want to make a REST API call, you click on this, it makes a REST API configuration screen where you can drag and drop the API specification, you can fill in the details and ask it to perform a certain action. You also have options to out of the box to connect with Excel documents. If you already have a Power Automate workflow that is defined or Power desktop application that you've created where you have the entire workflow defined, you can talk to those desktop flows through here and execute that as well. So there are many options that are available as part of this actions menu that you can explore too. We'll see how we can extend these items with actions. So this is where the agentic capability comes in when we talk about actions. So until now, what we saw is we started with a simple text where you took an existing agent that was already configured, you customized it through knowledge sources. That was the first option. The second option that we saw was we made the agent aware of the topic that the discussion is happening. And if that topic needs routing a person to another channel or to another workflow, then we had the option of using a custom trigger within that particular topic. And we said if this topic is related to a certain phrase words, then route that particular request to a user, like send it to another person, and then we gave them the options related to that. Then now, until now, whatever options that we saw, this is a conversational mode, right? So you went in to the chat prompt, you started asking questions. So there's always a conversation between the user and the bot and the agent that we created, where the communication happens. So now we'll talk about agentic approach of how Copilot is going to do this is through the actions. So this is where the entire workflow of how things are triggered will change, and I'm going to show a small video of how this happens, and then I think that will help you understand the workflow. So let's say when an email arrives for an employee onboarding process, and if this email arrives, a person is supposed to select what kind of device they are supposed to be onboarded with, like the laptop that they have to be assigned, the technician, the call that has to be scheduled with the technician. So we'll have to give them a list of devices that are available and give them an option to pick and choose from that. For this entire workflow, if you want to automate it, we will see a recorded
I've
demo
created
about
an
this.
agent to help onboard new employees, troubleshoot hardware questions, and order new devices. Here, you'll see I've provided a description and instructions in natural language to define the types of scenarios I like this agent to support. These instructions are key to guiding the behavior of this agent. I've added knowledge sources and actions specific to onboarding and hardware troubleshooting. But now I can also configure autonomous triggers for this agent so it can run automatically in response to an event, not only when a chat trigger occurs. To do this, I'll start by choosing from any of the trigger options available, which align to your existing business processes or systems and applications you use today. I'll select a trigger to start when a new employee is added or confirmed to our database. With a couple of steps, I'm able to configure this trigger and select the table and the scope for the Dataverse record where this new employee information is being stored for my organization. With this new trigger added to my agent, it will now execute the appropriate actions asynchronously without me having to request any support directly. It does this by leveraging the actions I've configured and the instructions I've given it to
Okay. So the recording that I was about to show is, so I hope you can see this now.
particular employee. To continue testing, I'll respond as if I were Miguel receiving this welcome message. And the agent continues to run, identifying the next step in the chain and leveraging the action to then list out all the devices available to Miguel. In addition to testing my new trigger, I can also view all the historical runs in the new activity page, giving makers insights into the autonomous actions for their agent. You now have the ability to review each agent run, handle exceptions, and make improvements. I'll drill into one activity run to show you what I mean. Here we see another dynamic plan that was created at runtime by this agent to execute this workflow for this specific new employee. We can see the connected third party systems that the agent used. Clicking on the details of an action, we can further dig into the specific inputs and outputs for this action, which is invaluable for debugging the connected systems and APIs. We are also able to explore the conversation history to learn more and see how we can improve this agent's outcomes. It is now easier than ever to create an agent capable of handling end to end tasks asynchronously to streamline workflows, enhance productivity, and drive operational success across departments.
All right. So as you see in this example, so the entire workflow of how an onboarding process can be automated can be triggered through this option. So what we mean by that, I'll just visually show what are the options that they're talking about. So if you go to this particular action, you can define the actions that you want to automatically happen. So let's say that I want to have a recurring action. Let me choose another agent that I've created before to show you what I mean by that. So this is the ASPI.NET agent that I've created, which can automatically trigger. So on the triggers that you have here, I have a trigger here, which can, instead of a user-based trigger, it's basically going to trigger based on a user, an automated trigger, like a timer-based trigger. So when you edit it, it's just pulling up the Power Automate page if you want to customize it further. But instead of customizing it further, I'm just going to go here and add a new trigger. So these are the different actions that can trigger your particular agent. So let's say if you want to trigger a particular action at a certain time frequency, you click on recurrence and say every day, maybe the use case could be that once you have this agent, you want your agent to send you a daily tip in your morning, right? So you can just create a recurring agent that can happen. So I can just say daily tips on aspire.net, and once I create it, I can say trigger this every 1 hour or every whatever duration that I have. So the trigger content that I want to send, I can customize it. Instead of sending it the default parameters, I'm just going to say send me a new tip on. So once I create this, entire text that I have given here as instruction will be sent to my agent, and that agent trigger will happen automatically. We can test this in action right now. So let's wait for it to complete to establish the trigger. I'm going to test this daily trigger. So when I click on it, for now it's just picking the current time. When I click on start testing, so what it happens is it triggers your agent, your entire workflow, and it will start executing. It will go to the public data sources, pull up all the information, and here is the what's new section that it has asked, and it has given me a response. It can be any kind of trigger that you can give, any kind of input. So the example that we saw when a new person joins your organization, so what they would have done in that sample is basically created a particular configuration to say that whenever a new request is sent or a new record is created in the database, then they would say trigger this entire workflow. So that gives you the ability to configure your workflow in terms of what needs to happen based on certain triggers. And that's the option that we saw in the previous window. So what I'm going to do now is just go back to this actions again, sorry, triggers again, and give you all the possible options that we saw. So this is the recurrence trigger that we saw, which occurs at a certain frequency. If a response is submitted in a Microsoft form, let's say someone is submitting a survey, your employee survey, and you want a workflow to trigger through an agentic workflow, then this can be an option for that. When a file is created in OneDrive, these are the things that can happen. If you go to the all section, there are 90 plus triggers that are available. It does not have to be just the featured ones. You can look at when an email is sent, when a new Slack channel is added, when a DevOps work item is created. Let's say if you want to do a code review through your agent, let's say when a code is pushed to Git, you want this trigger to automatically happen. You want it to take your code, connect to the repo within your workflow, do a code review through GitHub Copilot, share the results, or use your own agent which can do the code review through the documents that you have for coding standards and the knowledge reports that you've added, can do the code review on the file, then send you a report automatically. If you want to do all that, these are the triggering points that can happen. So this gives you that autonomous capability that we need. Rather than typing something on the chat, you can build one agent or one Copilot agent in the Copilot Studio that can serve both the purposes. If the user gives an input through the chat, you can execute the same workflow. Or if any of these triggers that you see here occurs, it can execute the same workflow. So that's the benefit of how the autonomous power of an agent comes into action here. So we'll go back to the slides. So there are many use cases that comes with this agentic capability. These are some of the sample use cases that they have showcased here. The IT service desk work use case for assigning a laptop or a person or devices that are needed for a person that's onboarded, the employee onboarding process that they have, the sales and service request that options that they have. So there's a lot of use cases that are there which you can play around with this. So when we talk about all this, move to the next slide. I think the slide should work now. Okay. Right. So when we talk about the extensibility options that Copilot offers, we saw about how it can be done at a low code nature using the Copilot Studio that we just now saw, or it could be a pro code using Azure AI Foundry. There are a lot of sessions that are going to be conducted as part of the Skill Fest, which talks about Azure AI Foundry, where you use Python or C Sharp or any of the tooling options that are available within the AI co-foundry. You can create your own models and you can customize it to the need. But what we saw now today is that it's kind of a low-code platform. You need to understand the concept of how to build integrations through Copilot, but you don't have to understand the depth of how things have to be written. You're not writing any piece of code as such. Right? All you're doing is just defining the workflows that are needed, and you're trying to manage it through that. So Copilot comes with a lot of plugin options through Power Platforms. These can be like prompt plugins, which can help you to write the right prompts. It can be a conversational plugin, which can help you to decide what topic of conversation needs to happen. There are other connector plugins as well. If you want to, we saw a few connectors about calling a REST API and things like that. We also saw about how Power Automate workflow can be triggered as part of the connector option. So these are some of the options that are available. So this gives you that extensibility power that we need. So we spoke briefly about how developers can use these extensible options to build and extend the capabilities of your agent. So this slide gives you options of what are the different integration options that you can have. If your Copilot Studio is powered through Azure, then these are the tools that you can pull up from, like using Azure AI Search. If you have an AI search, if you have a model which uses AI Search, if you want to make a REST API call, if you want to use a bot framework, if you want to use telemetry for logging information, let's say all your application logs are logged into application insights, and if you want your Copilot to connect to it periodically and see if your application was down at a certain time and then trigger a particular workflow within the agent, then it can do that as well. So there's a lot of capabilities that it offers which you can do. The analytics option within the Copilot Studio gives you ability to understand how your agent is performing, figure out what are the areas that you need to focus on to fix it, and this is what this slide is talking about. So with that, our session comes to a conclusion. And to get started more on Copilot Studio, you can use this QR code. There are a lot of tutorials that are available about how you can start your journey with using Copilot. Just take a moment to scan these QR codes. And with this, I think I can open up for question and answers. If there's any question from anyone, please post it on the chat. I'll be happy to take up some questions and answer them. Let me look at the chat window to see if there's any questions. So there's one question from Mayank asking if I want to be an Azure developer, how much time it will take, and what kind of knowledge do I have to get in. You can start. I mean, even though it's not related to Copilot, what I would say is just start with the basic Azure certifications. Start with AZ 900 just to understand the Azure fundamentals. And once you know more about what are the offerings that Azure offers and see if it's your cup of tea, try to understand if it makes sense. And then start into developer certification. So this entire certification journey can take somewhere between 1 to 3 months, depending on how quickly you learn the concepts and how you practice them. So once you know that, you should be capable of getting into an Azure related field quickly. All right. I don't see any other questions apart from these. Yeah. So before I close, I think for people, there's one slide that has the participation badge. Since you've participated in this AI Skillfest participation, you get a badge that you can post in your social media. Just take a moment to scan this QR. You'll be given a participation from Microsoft saying that you participated in the AI Skillfest, and you can just use the hashtag AI Skillfest handler and post it in your LinkedIn section as well. Right. So there's a question from another person, Karpuk, asking, can we create an agent to monitor my team's chat? Someone is tagged me. Yeah, if you're tagged in your, uh, if you're part of that, because the agent also has an account, so your agent should be part of that group chat as well, or a team's channel as well if you're using channels, and it can look through the conversation. So that can be part of one of the triggers. So let me go back to the triggers section. So this is the screen where create an agent and you can create a trigger. And out of the triggers, if you look at it, there's one trigger. You can do the search option here since we are talking about just the teams. If you search for teams, there are close to 15 or 16 triggers that you have. So when I mentioned in the channel, so this is what you're referring to as when someone is mentioning you, right? So when you choose this option, you can just say that when your agent is mentioned in the channel, you can define what it needs to happen. So here, this is the agent account that will be used, and if your account is also supposed to be monitored, or if your account is also supposed to be used within the workflow, then you can sign up with your connector here, whatever connector that you use. Click on next, and you can define the action that you want. If you want to append additional details within the body and then send it to your agent, then you can do that. To define which channel you want to choose, let's say within my login I have a channel called AI Foundry, sorry, a team's called AI Foundry, then I choose the general channel. So anytime in the general channel within this team site, if my login ID is tagged with the @ symbol, then this entire workflow can trigger. So let's say if I'm asking a question saying @ASP.NET agent, how do I do a REST API integration in ASP.NET? What would happen is your Teams channel will route your request to this particular agent, Agent, based on the knowledge sources that it is attached to, it will go trigger, take the response, and then post it back to the user in your channel. So that entire workflow you can set it up through this. So this is where the autonomous capability comes in, right? So you're not manually asking the question to your agent, you're passing that question through these triggers, and these are the different triggers that are available for teams through which you can make that integration happen. I hope that answers your question. Right. Any other questions from anyone? Perfect. Back to you, Sudhanshu. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Thank you so much, sir, for this insightful session. And thanks to all the attendees and the viewers who joined us for this exciting season of Agents session where agents took the center stage. Now it's your time to discover, build, and shape the future together. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a good day. We'll be back with another one.